So when people ask themselves how the state, the market, and society have interacted in the past, how that's changing today, I have a problem with those terms. As I said today at this wonderful IDS conference, markets are actually outcomes, and they're outcomes of the interactions between public, private actors, and civil society. And one of the key changes I find in terms of the ways that the public and the private sector have interacted is that over time we've had a private sector that's gotten more and more confident of actually steering the way. They're not actually sharing the roles. We no longer have a state that's sort of directing and thinking big and then working alongside the private sector. We actually have a less and less of a sort of a mission-oriented public sector, which then thinks of its role as simply de-risking, leveraging up the private sector. And that's something new, and I think it's highly problematic. Some of the big challenges we have today are how to not just get growth, even though many countries are not growing and they're desperate to grow, but a particular type of growth. So smart innovation-led growth, inclusive growth, sustainable growth, so actually how to transform an economy in a green direction. This isn't just about renewable energy. That requires a huge amount of policy making, but also of crowding in the private sector to be interested in these challenges. And I think there's lots to learn from the past mission-oriented investments where big problems were set for a society, whether they were technological problems like going to the moon, or today, for example, the energy Wende policy in Germany, where they really want zero carbon emissions. And when you have these big thinking kind of visions and missions for a country, you then have to invest in all sorts of different areas which actually get the private sector to be interested. We actually create animal spirits instead of assuming them. I think the Institute for Development Studies is extremely important, and so is the Science Policy Research Unit, in terms of really tackling some big societal problems in interdisciplinary ways. And a key issue there, and maybe I should say the word multidisciplinary ways, because it's not just about bringing, economics together with development, sociology, and anthropology, but also allowing people who've really had some training in economics and understood the huge battles and debates and disagreements over the history of economic thinking, and the same in these other fields, to then work together, but to bring into this working together process their understanding of how these debates, if you want, took place. And the biggest crisis we have today in education is that these students, the young students, don't know much history of thought. They're not really reading, first of all, they're not reading books, they're just reading journal articles, at least in economics, but really understanding how the history of thought has been a history of battles, a history of different terrains being contested, different theories within economics, which is my area, so I know more about it, so that we don't fall into the trap of saying the economists, or somehow that economics is more deterministic, say, than sociology. In each of these areas, there's been different battles, different debates that we should bring to the table today in thinking about the future. And a place like IDS is where that contested terrain is just so exciting, and so students are really lucky to be studying here.